Tony Blair warns a moment of decision is coming for Sinn Féin and the IRA. The programme for government is published. Now it's back to the numbers game. A suspended sentence for a Wexford man who killed his sexually abusive father. And this family spent last night in this shelter on Bray Seafront. Good evening and welcome. The British Prime Minister Tony Blair is en route to Denver, Colorado, where he's to meet President Clinton at the Summit of 8 Economic Powers. At a specially arranged bilateral meeting, the two men are to discuss Northern Ireland in the wake of the Lurgan killings. Mr. Blair is expected to urge the American administration to apply pressure on the Republican movement to call an unequivocal ceasefire. On Wednesday, Mr. Blair is to outline to the Commons the proposals his officials put to Sinn Féin in 2 meetings since the election. At a stopover in New York, he spoke of the changed atmosphere on both sides of the Atlantic since the shooting of the 2 RUC men.
I think there's really been a great change that's happened here in public opinion as a result of the Lurgan killings, because people know not merely were the killings wrong in themselves, but they came at the very time where people could see a new British government trying to take steps towards peace. And I think there is a moment of decision that is there for Sinn Féin, the IRA. And I think here, as elsewhere, people now want to see all those of good faith take this process forward.
And our correspondent Mark Little joins us now from Denver. Mark, how do you interpret what Tony Blair is saying here? Is it an offer? Is it a final offer, or is it an ultimatum?
I don't think so. I don't think it's any real deviation from the position he's been putting forward all week since the killing of the 2 RUC officers in Lurgan. I think what he's saying is simply that it is decision time. Either Sinn Féin are in or out of the peace process. In his words, he says, do they really want to be part of a forward process that is going to lead to a lasting settlement and peace in Northern Ireland? But at the same time, it's not a final exclusion of Sinn Féin from the process. I think there's speculation here that maybe Tony Blair believes that Sinn Féin, Gerry Adams, didn't have an inkling of the killings in Lurgan before they happened and may have opposed them. And as long as that's the case, they don't want to finally exclude them from the process, but are clearly trying to put the pressure on them and increase the pressure by coming here to Denver and having a bilateral summit meeting with President Clinton.
And what precisely is he asking President Clinton to do?
Well, I think it's important to realise, first of all, that this special bilateral meeting wasn't going to take place. Earlier in the week, they were saying there was no inkling of such a meeting, and certainly there was no indication that Northern Ireland would dominate that meeting. Things changed dramatically in the last 24 hours. I think what Tony Blair is doing here is coming to Denver, using it as the venue to bring the US back into the centre of the peace process. There's no indication yet that he's going to ask President Clinton to break off the continuing White House contacts with Sinn Féin. I think that's significant. I think what he's trying to do is get the American people and the President to up the pressure through the context they have, and also through the bully pulpit that President Clinton can use after the bilateral meeting here in Denver, Colorado.
And how is that meeting being perceived there in the United States, Mark?
There's 2 things that the US want to do at this meeting. The first thing, obviously, is increase the pressure on Sinn Féin, but the second is to try and reduce the tension ahead of the marching season, which begins, obviously, at Drumcree on July 6th. They are very, very anxious about that. All the White House sources I've talked to say that's their big priority, is to reduce the tension ahead of the marching season. They were also extremely shocked by the killing of the 2 RUC officers. So I think they will be very willing to take on board Tony Blair's ideas and try and bring themselves back into the centre of the process.
Mark, thank you for joining us. The RUC Chief Constable has said he fears the killing of 2 of his officers in Lurgan would be followed by further IRA atrocities, violence, he said, that would probably be matched by the loyalist paramilitaries. Ronnie Flanagan, launching the force's annual report, appealed to both communities to do what they could to avoid violence during the marching season.
It was hardly surprising, given recent events, that Drumcree and the whole issue of contentious orange parades should dominate the RUC's annual report. The Chief Constable, Ronnie Flanagan, said a decision on this year's parade due in a fortnight's time would be announced well in advance, and he appealed to both communities in the north to play their part to ensure there's not another summer of violence on the streets. He accepts, though, that there are those on both sides who will simply ignore that advice.
Well, it doesn't look as if things can be resolved, but I certainly have a hope that things will not be as bad as last year. Undoubtedly, there will be difficulties,